Chapter 2, verse of 62 till the end. Jhayato vishayan pumsaha sangastesu vajayate sanga sanjayate kamaha kamatrodho vijayate krodhat bhavati sammohaha sammohat smriti vikramaha smriti भ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशः बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति रागद्वेषवियुक्तैस्तु विषयान् इन्द्रियैश्चरन् आत्मवश्यैर्विधेयात्मा प्रसादमधिगच्छति प्रसादे सर्वदुःखानाम् हानिरस्योपजायते प्रसन्नचेतसो याशु बुद्धिः पर्यवतिष्ठते नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य न चायुक्तस्य भावना न चाभावयतः शान्तिः अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम् इन्द्रियाणां हि चरताम् यन्मनोनुविधीयते तदस्य हरति प्रज्ञाम् वायुर्नावमिवाम्भसि तस्माद्यस्य महाबाहो निगृहीतानि सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता या निशा सर्वभूतानां तस्यां जागर्ति संयमी यस्यां जागृति भूतानि सा दिशा पश्यतो मुनेः आपूर्यमाणम् अचलप्रतिष्ठम् समुद्रमापाः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत् तद्वत्कामायं प्रविशन्ति सर्वे स शान्तिमाप्नोति न कामकामी विहाय कामान्यः सर्वान् पुमां शरति निःस्पृहः निर्ममो निरहङ्कारः स शान्तिमधिगच्छति एषा ब्राह्मी स्थितिः पार्थ नैनां प्राप्य विमुह्यति स्यामन्तकालेऽपि ब्रह्मनिर्वाणमृच्छति.
Who is a wise person is the question. How do you determine wisdom in a human being? That's the question that Arjuna asked, for which the conclusion in verse number 68 is, when the senses are restrained from sense objects, that man is a wise, that person is a wise person. So, Krishna's definition of wisdom is senses under a person who has the senses are completely restrained from sense objects. After giving all the explanation about wisdom, after giving the explanation about the devastating effects of the senses and the senses which is uncontrolled, the mind which is running behind the world, after giving all the explanation, he concludes by saying, therefore, wisdom is one, a wise person is one, where the senses are restrained from sense objects. The natural tendency of the senses is to run behind the sense objects. The natural tendency of the mind is to get attached. The natural tendency of the intellect is to be arrogant. These are all the natural phenomena. That which seems to be the natural, which seems to be uncontrollable, this person has mastered it. Again I repeat, the nature of the senses is to run behind the sense objects. The nature of the mind is to get attached. The nature of the intellect, the gross intellect, is to feel arrogant. What they call as Vidya Garbha. The pride of the person who has little bit of knowledge, you can see the arrogance in that. You can see the arrogance in that human being. So the natural tendency. So when he says natural, or what we mean by the word natural is, it's not correct. This is something very difficult to understand. Just because you use the word natural, it doesn't mean it is correct. The natural tendency is to get angry. That doesn't mean anger is correct. The natural tendency is to laze around, is to be indisciplined. That doesn't mean it's correct. Oh, anyway, it's natural, no sir. Why can't we just leave it like that? You can leave it like that. He has no problem. But the question that Arjuna asked is, who is a wise man? For which the answer is, that which seems to be natural, that which is impossible to conquer, this person has conquered. By virtue of what he has conquered, that he has already explained. By following the process of tapas, by following whatever the stories that we have been seeing all now, by following all that, this person has conquered. You follow? What is the starting point of wisdom? The starting point of wisdom is not you don't come from the higher to the lower. You go from first standard to PhD. You don't come from PhD to, that's the natural process of education. So what is the starting point? The starting point is senses under control. It's impossible for any human being, when he is all by himself, to believe that his senses are not under control. It's impossible. You sit all by yourself, and if you look at yourself, it's impossible to believe that your senses are not under control. For it looks like it's always under control. My senses are under, maybe other senses are not under. It's very difficult even to believe that one senses is not under control. The word control we have already defined. Control means, the word control means a discipline. Word control implies discipline. The word control implies something higher is directing it. That's what control means. The word control means discipline. The word control means something higher is directing. Then only you can call it as control. In the absence of the higher, when anything is practiced, it's frustration. It's frustration. It turns into a hypocrisy. It turns into something which is not, what do you say, evolutionary by nature. It's not evolutionary by nature. Therefore, what should control the higher should control the lower. That's where in the previous verse he concluded with saying, either you develop your own higher faculty, till you develop the higher faculty, borrow it from someone. And the tendency of the lower is You see children, all children think they are wise, no? You speak to a 13-year-old, you speak to a 15-year-old, they think they know everything. Not that they don't know. I'm not saying they don't know. They believe that they know. Just as the 40-year-old person also believes that he knows. Yeah. Don't talk about an old man. There is nothing that he doesn't. There is nothing that he doesn't know. Yeah. What should be done? What should not be done? When it should be done? When it should not be done? For all the lectures and irritation that I am, then only I realized how much I am irritating people by sitting and talking non-stop for the amount of discourses that I got. I was also, correct. I was also, everyone seems to know everything. Subtler it is, more knowledgeable a person becomes. What is subtler in nature? The higher, which has to understand life, already has concluded that it knows. When it has concluded already that it knows, it cannot practice any control. That's why how much ever a person hears, they are not able to exercise any control. Because when I know it already, others must practice control. I don't have to practice. So he goes on saying, senses are completely restrained from sense objects. Meaning, start from the area where you believe that it's so obvious that you have control already. How to control my ego, people ask. How to control this, people ask. No one asks how to control the senses. Out of boredom, out of neutralization, the senses itself doesn't want certain things. Out of boredom, out of neutralization, out of incapacity, the senses itself doesn't want anything or something, whatever be it. That is not control. Then what is control? Control is determined by a few factors. Control is determined by a few factors. First thing is, it is available. First thing is, the sense object is available. Number 2 is, your senses are alive and sharp to contact it. Third is, the conducive environment is there. You follow? These are the factors that determines control. Supposing the sense object itself is not there, what control is it? There is absolutely no control. Or the moment the exposure comes, the person will want it. Therefore, all the control that the person has been believing that is practicing till now is not. You follow? Control is determined by the few factors. What are the factors? Number 1, the object must be available. See, object must be available means object must be available. Objects are available all the time. Objects must be available means what is implied here? Objects must be available means what? Objects are available all the time. What does it mean? At hand. Correct. At hand means it's there, it's affordable, you can, anytime you can contact, anytime you can get it. That's what is meant by objects It's like lot of money is in the bank. Money has to be available to you means what? You don't say abundant money in the bank. That doesn't make you can't say abundant money, say give me, no. So availability means what? It is available to you now. If it is available to you now means what? Means what? Means what? You are that much, it is within your reach. That's what he said correctly. At hand. Nime alternative exam class. Yeah, varam and the answer varamaten. So we'll have alternative classes. At hand means it is there. Now the second point of control is it's there, but your senses are not available. Then it is of no. Then what is control there? Again there is no control. You follow? You can't take a blind man on sightseeing. You can't bring a deaf man and make him sit here, for he will not. So that senses itself is not. So one is the object is there. Second facet to determine control is your senses are alert and available. For what? For what? To register the contact. Otherwise you are contacting, mind is elsewhere. Registering the perception, registering the contact. Are you able to follow? The third thing is what? Senses are there, object is there, but not at two different points of time. Both are there, that's the conducive environment. This is the difference between Rama and Ravana. With everything around, he practiced control. The moment something came, Ravana lost. Are you able to follow? You don't understand the concept, understand the story at least. Both are one and the same thing. So control implies conducive environment, the senses and the sense objects. Everything is there, but still the person is practicing control. Why? Why? Why he is practicing control? With all this around, a person is sitting and practicing control. Why? Or what makes him to practice that control? He has understood the futility. He has understood the uselessness of that effort of continuous sense contacts. Having understood the uselessness of it, in spite of having everything, he is practicing control. It means what? He has that much knowledge and understanding. He has that much knowledge, he has that much understanding, his depth is so completely. Opposite of that is the senses itself drives action to acquire the object, or object itself it covets, it sits and mentally someone else is having it, but I sit and mentally covet. What is that coveting? Isavasa says, do not covet. Most of the people will not make an effort to acquire that. For to acquire that demands that much of effort. So the most useless way is what? Sit and covet. Coveting means, oh, that man is having, this man is having, it is good, it is good. How nice if it were, if I also have, how nice it will be. Coveting. You follow? The third is what? In the poem Pineapple and the Bee, he says, one breaks the glass and cuts his, with hopeless wish one looks and lingers, while another breaks the glass and cuts his finger. But they whom truth and wisdom lead can gather honey from a, how can you gather honey from a, how the possibility of honey comes in a weed. Weed means, that's why it's called weed. You know that, no? It's called weed because there is no bee will go near a weed. Why? It's a futile effort to go near the weed. There is no. They whom truth and wisdom lead can gather honey from a weed. What is truth and wisdom? By the process of manana, by the process of knowledge and understanding, he is established. And that person practices, his senses are completely restrained from sense objects. Therefore, in order to practice control, you need to understand these factors. Then you know what control is. If the object itself is not available, object is there, but your senses are not functioning. Senses are functioning, object is there, but both don't meet at the same time. When everything meets at the same time, at that point of time, all meets. It's not that they will not meet, they meet. At that point of time, when you contact, losing the control, what are you doing to yourself? What are you doing to yourself? Indulging. What are you doing to yourself? Having understood that this man is practicing restraint, what are you doing to yourself? Increasing the desires, increasing the vasanas, increasing the likes and dislikes. Increasing the vasanas, increasing the likes and dislikes means potential for future births, potential for future, instead of not only suffering now, you are ensuring your future suffering also. But it doesn't look like future suffering. Why? That's the starting point. It doesn't look like future suffering. Why? Instant happiness. Because of the instant happiness. Able to follow? Therefore, anything that gives instant joy, he quickly withdraws. For he understands what? There is something destructive in that. What is destruction? What is the destruction? Again and again and again you have to come back to exhaust the desire. Ramatirtha says, beautifully he says, people are crying because their desires are not fulfilled. People should cry because they have entertained the desires, for they have to painfully go through the process of experiencing that. He says, people are crying because their desires are not being fulfilled. He says, you should not cry for that. You should cry because you have already entertained desires. For you have to painfully go through the process of experiencing it. And every experience is a potential time bomb in it, a potential destruction in it. For what? To fall again. Therefore, the wise one, his wisdom is established, whose senses are completely restrained from sense. He restrains himself completely. How does he restrain himself completely? if you live a life of doing that which ought to be done, your senses will have no time or energy to contact the sense objects. So what he does, how does he practice control? He starts doing karma. He starts doing karma. That's chapter 3, Karma Yoga. How does he practice? It's nice to tell the person practice control. How can you practice control? You can only shift the attention. If you are not shifting the attention into karma, the attention goes into indulgence only. And today, the word action itself is detesting. For we are so comfortable with replacements for action. Replacement for human effort. We start discovering machines because of what? It becomes no one used the word easy. Carefully follow the fallacy in thinking. They didn't use the word easy. They used the word efficiency. All the destruction of human beings is because of that one word called efficiency. It has to be more efficient, means it has to be faster, it has to be quicker, it should not consume any time. Even before the thought process is completed, the object must appear. And he is not saying go back to bullock cart, go back to stone. He is not saying that. What he is saying is how the fallacy in thinking. For that's what the human being follows. Action is followed by action is gross. What is subtle? The thinking that drives the action. Action is gross. And what drives that action? The thinking. What is the thinking? Make action more efficient. If you have to make actions efficient, you need a machine which will not a human being. Why? That's why I always give this example. Albert Einstein is sitting in front of you and a calculator is there. If you have to calculate, who you will trust? 50 rupee calculator looks more trustworthy than Einstein. Why? Chances of Einstein making mistake is there. Calculator can never make a mistake unless you enter the correct. If you enter the digits wrongly, then it is your. Even there they say computer made a mistake. How can a computer, you entered it? Action has become it's not only now, throughout the human being existence. I always, at least I used to sit and imagine in those days what comfort they had to talk about all this. If it is spoken about today, it looks like very this thing. In those days where nothing was there, the fact that they are sitting and talking about all this means right through the attitude to avoid action is the same. Attitude to avoid action means getting into indulgences. Therefore, to avoid indulgences, what you have to do? Get into action. What kind of action? What attitude? Technique and all is going to follow later. How is he practicing? What he did to come to this point where the senses are restrained from sense objects? It means the senses are constantly monitored, driven, controlled by something higher. What is higher? What is higher? The intellect. For all practical purposes, at our level, we can take it as, or okay, why at our level? I will say at my level, I will take it as, no sir, at our level. At my level, I have taken Shastras as the wise man as the authority. For you are not able to, if you exercise your intellect will always give logic to support what? It's very interesting. The logic, instead of supporting the higher, the logic always says, only use that word, instead of logic saying do it now, the logic always says postpone, tomorrow. Higher I will do tomorrow, the lower I will attend to today. The lower I will attend to now, the higher I will attend to tomorrow. The higher says, the Shastra says, the higher intellect says, postpone the lower for tomorrow, do the higher now. That postponing the lower for tomorrow is tapas. Postponing the higher for tomorrow is indulgence. You don't need so much of wisdom to understand all this. Very, very common sense. Postponing the whatever you think that which ought to be, done. Mahabharata, there is a story. A man came to that, a Brahmin came to Karna. He wanted wood, logs of wood for doing yajna, sacrifice. He couldn't find that, and he was not in a position to go and get it also, nor he could ask someone to get it. So he came to him and said, I heard that you are a great giver. I want wood. Straight away he broke the 4 pillars and he gave. People around him said, why did you do that? For you know how expensive this? In the palace there are 4 sandalwood pillars. He broke that and he gave. He said, why did you do that? He said, I could have told him to come. I could have told him to come tomorrow. By the time I could have gathered enough food. But then, when he comes tomorrow, I will tell him tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow never comes. James Bond title Mari. Tomorrow never comes. It's always the higher is postponed for the. Remember Vivekananda. He said 2 categories of people only. There are only 2 categories of people. One lift themselves up for the sake of the ideal. The others bring the ideal down. Always logic will say how to bring the ideal down. For it is that much difficult to lift yourself up for the sake of the ideal. This man has done all this in the past, as a result of which he is sitting today as a wise man. His wisdom we will like to covet. His wisdom we will like to use. His wisdom we will want to make use of, but not. That's what Ramana says, you come to a wise man and you will not know what to ask him, he said. Even when we go to a wise man, we covet. What is coveting there? We like to covet his, for that's what he has in abundance. You go to a rich man, he has wealth in abundance. You to a wise man, you go now, he has wisdom in abundance, and you like to. But one thing is very clear. What? the higher is always postponed. And suddenly interest will come in the higher when the faculties don't cooperate. When senses are not functioning, when faculties don't cooperate, when that buddhi, the dhi is at its lowest point, where absorption is very low, what he calls as udana shakti is very, very low. At that time, contacting the higher is of no, at the most it becomes a very good entertainment, that's all. At the most becomes a very good. What does one do in this scenario? What does one do to reverse it? He says, start from controlling the senses. But controlling the senses, looks like my senses are already under control. Where to start, sir? The proof of the senses under control is what? Are you able to do your obligatory actions? Huxley said, education is the ability, education is the capacity in a human being to do a thing when it ought to be done, whether you like it or not. If you take that as a standard and look at one's own self, you know how much your senses are under control or not under. You follow? Therefore, his wisdom is established, whose senses are restrained. Therefore, means for all practical purposes, he is concluding Siddha Prajna. His senses are under control. The next few verses is a glorification of that person. Next few verses is a glorification, and then he concludes. You feel like thinking, why is he concluding so fast? He could have given some more verses, some more thing we would have think. Therefore, his wisdom is established, whose senses are under control. Or at least he should feel that. Why is he concluding? Why is he concluding so fast? அப்பாட முடிச்சிட்டா இருப்போம். நெக்ஸ்ட் சாப்டருக்கு போலான்னா எஸ் 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 Yes. Yes. Correct. Is that actually control? In the beginning stages, it is control. For a person doesn't have the capacity to understand. Understanding, a conducive environment for understanding can happen only when the person is practicing that. Though it is mechanical, the conducive environment can happen only when it is started. But again the difficulty is, the mind always says, let me understand first. Conditioning. Now, every facet of life is conditioning. Why do we have to leave the footwear there and come and sit inside? It is It's conditioning. Why do we wear a particular type of dress is a conditioning. Why can't we walk around naked? It is conditioning. If you look at life, 99.9% of the things we do is conditioned only. Of all the conditioning, religious conditioning is very deep rooted. To that extent, yes, it's a deep rooted conditioning. But nevertheless, the entire life of a human being, from starting till the end, he lives through conditioning only. Why? Are you able to follow what I am saying? It's only conditioning. Every culture has their own conditioning. Every religion has their own conditioning. What is conditioning means? The word conditioning. What is conditioning means? Conditioned. Conditioning comes from the word conditioned. What does that mean? Conditioned by what? Conditioned by whom? Conditioned by whom? Conditioned by what? When? Time, place, all that goes all put together in one word. We call it conditioning. You follow? Conditioned by what? Conditioned by whom? Can a human being avoid conditioning completely? Yes, it is possible to avoid conditioning completely when he has religiously, strictly followed the conditionings. You can become a very good leader only when you have you can become a very good leader only when you have followed someone. Correct? Straight away you can't become a leader. You can become a leader only when you have followed. Now when you are going through that phase of following someone, that part of it is conditioning. You can't avoid that. What conditioning I follow, I have the liberality. I have the freedom to choose. I have the freedom to choose what to follow and what not to follow. But nevertheless, at any point of time I have to follow this. Maybe people would have noticed and they didn't say. Only one person has said it to me very, very clearly. I was so impressed by that. See, when we come here, there is a Saraswati outside, statue. First of all, have you noticed that there is a statue here? There is a goddess sitting there. Only one person. Maybe others have noticed, but they didn't say it. If they have noticed, they would not have done it. The fact that they have doing it means they have not noticed. Footwear below that. Only one person has. I don't say it. It's conditioning. From one angle it is conditioning. From another angle you call it as from one angle it is conditioning. From another angle you call it as discipline. Both are one and the same. The dividing line is very thin. What is the dividing line? You follow a discipline because discipline brings in awareness. Conditioning will not bring in awareness. The moment I turn it into a discipline, it brings an awareness. Awareness of what? Awareness of what? Awareness of my actions. God is all pervading. No, what difference does it make where I leave the footwear? God is all pervading. No. You follow? All that matters is I have to be grateful that a conditioning has to be converted into a discipline. Now, you can convert it into a discipline only when the conditionings are followed. Just as I gave this example 3-4 classes back here. When the child starts going to school, it is psychology says human beings are not given freedom, for conditioning starts very early. You know the first conditioning of a human being? We call it as culture now. You know what is the first conditioning in a human being's life? Can anyone say that? Which no other species has to follow that. They are free. The toilet habits. You know that? The first conditioning of a human being, where does it start from? No other animal has a problem. No. They don't have to worry about going to a... You know that? So, psychology says conditioning starts from there. That doesn't mean stuck. You follow what I am saying? It's conditioning. But then, we don't understand the importance of conditioning. Therefore, who will understand the importance of that conditioning as a discipline? The person who has followed that reaps the benefit, having understood the deeper implications. A person cannot, as an information, understand that importance. It's impossible. What we are trying today is we want to understand everything through. We want to understand the importance of everything through information, not through practice. Therefore, religious conditioning is, follow what I am saying, is a must. Just as conditionings are must. That's why I am giving such a weird example. I don't know whether you have even thought about it. Where does conditioning start in a human being, where other species need not follow that at all? Starts from there. A name is given to you and you are conditioned by that name. If there are 100 people sleeping in a room, and I come and shout, if someone shouts, Arvindan, you know who will wake up? The 99 will not wake up. Only me. The very first time I was flying from Johannesburg to Durban, I didn't realize that, that name, surname complication, we suffer a lot here. So I was saying, last and final boarding call for Mr. Ramakrishnan. Last and final boarding call for Mr. Ramakrishnan. I am sitting. For I am not. Ramakrishnan is my father, not me. And that lady came to me and said, are you going to take this flight? Show your boarding pass. She thought I am an illiterate. I showed her. Why are you sitting here? They are calling you for? Hold on. I was thinking, where did you call me? Conditioning. Able to follow? The name is now it is the conditioning that gives some identity. A wise one is free from all conditioning because he doesn't need identity. verse number 70, he is going to talk about that. Apuryamanam machala pratishta. Conditioning brings about an identity, and you need an identity to get to that state. Therefore, they kept so many conditionings. Today it has become in the name of modern thinking, in the name of liberality, in the name of science and growth and all that. All this looks like useless, mechanical, superstitious. Yes, it is mechanical, it is superstitious. To whom? To whom? To a person who has transcended. For a person who has not transcended, he needs to necessarily follow some discipline. Some discipline means certain conditionings. Conditioning means doing something which you don't understand. But for you to understand, doing is a conducive environment. That's why I remember spending a lot of time in this. Does knowledge come first or action comes first? It's a two pedal. It's a two pedals. I have discussed this. Does knowledge come first or action come first? The arrogance of the human being says knowledge must come first. The wise man says action must come first. For action is a conducive environment for knowledge. You follow? Who is getting stuck? Who is getting stuck? The person who is doing only one pedal. The person who is doing only one pedal will get stuck. That's why we say do the other pedal also. Who will get stuck? Those who are refusing to do that. Now, those who come here stop going into the. One is stuck with the pedal of rituals. Another is stuck with the pedal of understanding only. To grow, you need both the pedals. Yes. 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 They will become stubborn. It's better to be stubborn. This is my opinion now. Better to be doing something and turn stubborn rather than not doing anything at all. Just as I would say, it is better to be stubborn in saying, whatever happens, I will come to the class, rather than thinking, it's okay, if I don't go for 1 week, so what? I can do something. Rather, it's being better to be stubborn in doing, rather than not doing anything at all in the name of being. In the name of being knowledgeable, liberal. In fact, more you understand, more you will want to do. More you understand, more you will want to do. More you understand the importance of doing yajna, more yajna karma you will want to do. More you understand the obligation, more you will want to do. But then, always you find people are stuck in only one. Those who are stuck with this, they just become dry intellectuals. That's why they say, colloquially they talk about, Summa Vedantam pesada they talk. Referring to what? And in a way they are correct also. Just as those who simply sit in for the mind always likes to do only one. Mind always likes to do only one. It will never do both. It will never do both. Growth happens only when both are done. Conditioning, people will get stuck in conditioning. What is conditioning? See, what is aesthetics? One man's conditioning. This is the way it has to be kept. Who decides that? What is beauty? What is aesthetics? Everything is nothing but, if you deeply analyze, nothing is what? Nothing is what? See, in the concert, this is how that pattern is. Who decided that? One man decided that, no. So today they say, why do that? Do something else. Not saying who's right, who's wrong. Nevertheless, human being cannot avoid conditioning. In and through the conditioning, he has to gain knowledge. Those who come into knowledge does one pedal and ignore the other. Those who go there ignore this pedal. And this group sit and criticizes that group will sit and criticize, and both keep fighting with each other. We say we don't have time for all that. We are interested in doing tapas and evolution. That's why we don't belong to any group. In the group we can never merge, because we belong to a third group. People will get stuck. Who will get stuck? Who refuses to use the other pedal. Okay? What does one do? Simultaneously do both. When he says simultaneously do both, he is not saying go back to rituals. Whatsoever you have understood as your obligations today. He's not saying go back to rituals. That's not whatsoever you have fixed certain things as your obligations. How much are you able to hold on to it? Or what makes you not able to hold on to it? Because of falling a prey to senses. Like sun? You follow? At your level, you have certain obligations. Whatsoever you think as your obligations, what is the tendency behind it? How to quickly do it and be free of it. He's not talking about religious rituals. He's talking about the very obligation itself. The Upanishad says, look at that. One of the most authoritative Upanishads, he says, Annam cha Brahma. Brahman is food. One yajna that you are doing morning, noon and night without fail is, all other yajna you cannot do. But one yajna which you cannot avoid is, what is the attitude towards that? What is the attitude? That's an obligation. That's all they are saying. You follow? That whole Upanishad, that entire chapter is devoted to food. And if you read that Upanishad, looks like they are gluttonous. So gluttony. Why do they talk about food? It's an obligation. Now, you can treat it as an indulgence, or you can treat it as a pain, or you can treat it as an obligation. The moment you start treating it as an obligation, cooking becomes. Today, you are cooking for someone else, and the thought of that person is so irritating. Yeah, you can't cook. Where is obligation? That's why he said, Annam Cha Brahma. The whole one of the fascinating Upanishads. So, what is obligation? It's not about sitting and doing a ritual here. Whatever be that. So, what is the tendency towards those obligations? Quickly finish it off. For doing that is painful. Therefore, they went into so much. Why I am giving this as an example is because you brought in an example of onion, garlic. I don't know who's not eating onion and garlic nowadays. Everyone is eating. I am also eating. Annam Cha Brahma, it says. Nowhere else food is equated to Brahma, means Brahman. Food is. What does it mean? It's a yajna happening. Yajna means obligation. What is the obligation? So you cook with prayerful attitude. You eat with prayerful attitude. You serve with prayerful attitude. That itself, you are doing 3 yajnas in a day. You don't have to sit and do yajnas. I am just giving one example. And now I can go on and on and on about every facet of life. But then, the starting point of it is always is conditioning. Why it is conditioning is because someone else tells you, decides, and you have to. The bottom line problem is what? When did Ganesha say he likes only Modaka? Ganesha likes only Modaka, no. Tirupati Balaji likes only. No. When did Balaji come and tell anyone? When did Ganesha come and tell anyone? You can ridicule the whole thing and not do anything. You ridicule and not do anything. It's not about ridiculing that. The bottom line is what? Refusing to follow an authority. When you are following an authority, initially it is conditioning, and that conditioning will turn into a stubbornness. Better to be stubborn, because in that stubbornness the possibility of that man growing is there, rather than not doing anything in the name of being. As I am saying all this, I am punctuating it by saying, correct. When I say my personal opinion, you are not bound by it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to really bother about it. That's all. You follow? Nothing. When the understanding has happened, the bhavana behind the action is so different, which you can't see it from a person who has understood. The bhavana that he brings into the action is so different, which we can never understand from outside. We can say it's automatic, we can say it is effortless. A better word is, no, I am talking about a person who is doing it with understanding. You can never know it from outside. In fact, carefully follow now, it will look more stubborn from outside. That's why the wise men are seen more stubborn than. You always feel, why can't you be more understanding? Why do you have to be so rigid? Wisdom is that. For both has the same expression from outside. But then to call someone as wise and to call someone as stubborn is personal opinion. For how do I know who is wise? Are you able to follow? How do I know who is wise? Again it becomes once. Oh, someone said follow this. Ramana Maharishi said follow that. You are conditioned to believe that Ramana is wise and enlightened. Supposing if you belong to a group where you believe that he is the most laziest person to have ever lived in, you will see everything. So, to see someone as wise, to see it is effortless and all doesn't make any. All that you should understand is what? The bhavana behind it is so different. From outside it will look stubborn only. For it's not stubborn, it is wisdom. But this person, I don't think he is so wise. Now that is your A person being wise, B person is ignorant, that's part of your conditioning. You follow? But whatever it is, Jesus Christ is not realized, sir. One person, Jesus Christ, no, what difference now? How do you know this man is realized in the first place? For you can never. Therefore, somewhere down the line, the starting point of everything is what? Conditioning only. For if you become free of conditioning, you will be so scared to live life. You will not know to take the next step. Like he always says, the carpet is pulled under your feet. You don't have any solid grounds to stand at all. And we need some ground to start. What is that? Action. Action becomes a conducive environment for gaining knowledge. You should be free. But you have to listen to what I am saying. What does it mean? You have to be conditioned only by me. Come to me only, he says. What does it mean? You need a starting point. And that starting point is always mechanical it will be mechanical by nature. Just as a child going to school is, for the child it is mechanical. How do you understand that? That day the child gets ready to go to school. All by itself, it's no more a child. How do you know that? A a student is a student. If you teach a PhD class, you will know that. Same disturbance that you find in kindergarten is the same thing that you have now. What does it mean? For I am talking there also, that's all. Otherwise it's impossible for you to believe that how can a PhD student behave like that. But exactly the day the child gets ready by itself, not forced by anything, it means it has qualified to become a teacher. It is qualified to become a teacher. For even there, they have to be poked. They have to be poked, no? At 55, if the man needs a boss to oversee his work, are you able to follow? Has a humanity ever grown? If the boss is not there, if the rules and regulations are not there, never in my life I saw bundles of currency chest and update. I told Venkat I want some small change. He came and gave me change. I didn't feel like giving it to anyone. The print smell also didn't go straight from my friend came. I told him that Basha movie Patu Madri illa, I said. In that Basha movie the fellow says, no, straight from Nasik printed chone, it goes to this man. Now what a control this man has. It's like you see that now you go and ask for a change for someone, so difficult is to get small change. Manager I don't know, maybe manager maybe I don't know, Ningle print panella I doubt it. Maybe did you print it by yourself? You follow? A person at that level also needs someone to monitor. That's all I am trying to say. Left to oneself, what is the nature of a human being? That's why targets has to be given, rules and regulations has to be set, constitution has to be framed, income tax, amendment after amendment after amendment has to be made, all for what? All because of what? A human being is fundamentally indisciplined. Doesn't matter whether he wears a three-piece suit or whether he wears a three-piece suit and get down from a Mercedes Benz, or is the farmer on the roadside wearing going shirtless, going without dhoti. Both are one and the same. At least that man makes it so obvious, this man knows how to cover it up also. Actually, who's more dangerous? Who's more dangerous? Who's more dangerous? The man who knows how to cover it up is more dangerous than, just as how much ever ignorant I am, I can cover it up and make you believe that I am very wise. No. So who's more dangerous? You follow what I am saying? Why? Fundamentally the human being is disciplined. That indiscipline can be brought under some control only by giving a rigid set of rules to follow. You have a choice love your country and pay the tax, na? Will anyone pay? SMS after SMS, mail after mail, one full page advertisement for what? Pay tax. எல்லாம் முடிச்சதுக்கு அப்புறமும் I come to Subramaniam and say, கொஞ்சம் பார்த்து பண்ணுங்க அப்படின்னா what does it mean? Correct? What does it mean? Avoid. So from this what you understand? A conditioning is for a force, a discipline. A conditioning is for a conditioning is given to you for your own benefit, and if you understand, you don't need it after that. As long as you think that you are doing a favor to others, favor to the society, favor to God, favor to this, favor to that, you are not. A conditioning, a discipline is given for your own. But the tendency is always to, I still remember during the academy there is a schedule. You have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, there is a schedule. Anyone who has any problem, standard answer. Follow the schedule. Follow the schedule. Standard answer. Since I was there, I one person is coming with this problem, one person coming with another problem, third person with third problem, unconnected. Answer is one. What? Follow the schedule. 35 years later, I am able to understand the importance of following a schedule. At that point of time, the tendency is always to break it. You follow what I am saying? It's the same. Everywhere it's the same. For the concept remains the same. What is the concept? When a human being by nature is fundamentally indisciplined, he ought to be disciplined. If you have to be disciplined, you can't discipline it by yourself. Someone has to tell you from outside. At that point of time, to hear it from someone is so painful, so irritating. Correct. So irritating, so frustrating, so painful. Just as, always remember this, the lower will see the higher as a hindrance. The child will see the parent as a hindrance. Just as we see the Shastras as hindrance. A wise man. Hindrance to what? One's own enjoyment. There's nothing, no one is really bothered about family, society, culture, religion, time pass talk. At the end of the day, everyone is concerned about one's own enjoyment, and whatsoever interferes with that, rebel against that. So, better to follow that. Why I am saying all that is because better to follow that stubbornly rather than rebel. What you follow is not necessarily the other has to follow, but everyone has to follow. Everyone has to follow something. That freedom you have to choose. But nevertheless, here he is saying follow a discipline. It is conditioning, it is painful, It is frustrating. Why? Because it directly interferes with your. It directly interferes with your. It directly interferes with your. One word. Enjoyment. Okay. Two words. Correct. You are passed. Evening class varavana. You are passed. Your pass certificate கொடுத்து you can send him out. Immediate pleasure. Senses by nature run behind instant pleasures. Mind by nature wants instant fulfillment of desires. And these two works hand in glove, has its own weird logic. So madness also has its own logic. You know that, no? There is a method in madness also has its own logic. You can understand that only if you had ever had a conversation with a mad person. He will never get tired, you will get tired. I don't know. At least I know I have spoken to quite a few. Say the same thing, fourth time you will get tired, but that person will not get tired. Number one. Number two, you can never disprove what he says. Logically. All that you know is what? Something is wrong, somewhere fundamentally, but you will not know where to locate and pinpoint. What is wrong? What is the fundamental wrong? Instant. Anything that says instant pleasure, the senses and the mind will run. Wherever they are not running, whatever they are resisting, whatever they are rebelling against, you can take it as it's good for you. You can take it as it is good for you. The verse போலான்னு நினைச்ச போது unnecessary disturb பண்ணிட்டான். That's what he says. He disturbed me unnecessarily, irritated me also. Wise one lives life like that. Whatever, where others sees it as beneficial, he sees it as dangerous. Wherever others see it as a hindrance, he sees something beneficial in that. And the whole world says, don't pay tax. You can take it for granted that your goodness lies in. The majority will always go behind what? Take the population, take the percentage, the followers of Satan versus the followers of divine. There are 8 billion. Who has more population? Who has more support? Right. But one man who follows dharma can, the power that he brings in, the energy, the power, the strength that he brings in can outlast, can defeat the entire. That's the Vedic aphorism. Dharmo rakshati. So you protect dharma, dharma protects you. If dharma has left you, if dharma is not protecting you, what does it mean? Why dharma needs your protection? You are not following. If dharma needs my protection, it's adharma. Dharma doesn't need my protection. If I follow that, it protects me. What is dharma? The nature of the senses is to run behind the sense objects. the nature of the mind is to get attached. The nature of intelligence is arrogance. Nature of intelligence is arrogance. The nature of mind is to get attached. The nature of senses is to run behind the sense objects. What is dharma? What is dharma? Whatever ought to be done to kill all these three, whatever ought to be done to kill all these three, you ought to do it, and you ought to be stubborn in doing that. Doesn't matter if it appears to be conditional. Be stubborn in following, just as an ignorant man is stubborn in following his likes and dislikes. The wise one is stubborn in. For a wise man, we will not use the word stubborn. We use the word conviction. He follows his conviction. But from outside, it looks like.